Jake Morrison sat in his old pickup truck and stared at the piece of paper in his hands. The words were simple but scary. Final notice was written in big red letters at the top. Below that it said he had 60 days to pay the bank or lose his ranch. He folded the paper and put it in his shirt pocket. His hands were shaking a little. Jake had owned the Double M Ranch for 15 years. It was everything he had in the world. The idea of losing it made his chest feel tight. The truck's engine made a rough sound when he started it. Jake needed to get it fixed, but he had no money for that either. He had no money for anything anymore. The drought had killed his business. For 3 years, almost no rain had fallen on his land. The grass turned brown and died. His cattle got thin and weak. He had to sell most of them just to pay for feed for the ones that were left. Jake drove down the dusty road that led away from his ranch. In his rearview mirror, he could see the old wooden fence posts and the rusty gate. The paint on his ranch sign was peeling off. It used to say Double M Ranch Est 1995 in bright blue letters. Now you could barely read it. The road was bumpy and full of holes. Jake's truck bounced and rattled as he drove. He passed his neighbor's ranch, which looked just as bad as his own. The drought had hurt everyone in the area. Some ranchers had already given up and moved to the city. Jake didn't want to do that. He loved this land. His father had taught him how to work with cattle and horses right here on these roads. As he drove, Jake thought about his plan. It was not a very good plan, but it was the only one he had. There was a horse auction in Millfield about 2 hours away. He had heard that sometimes you could find a good working horse for a fair price. Jake had $800. It was all the money he had left in the world. He needed to buy a horse that could help him work his land and maybe save his ranch. The problem was that $800 was not much money for a good horse. A strong, healthy horse that could do ranch work usually cost much more than that, but Jake had to try. Without a horse, he could not do the work he needed to do. His old horse, Ranger, had died 6 months ago. Since then, Jake had been trying to do everything by himself. It was too much work for one man. Jake's truck climbed up a hill, and he could see the town of Millfield in the distance. It was a small place with one main street and a few dozen buildings. Most of the stores were closed now. Like many small towns, Millfield was slowly dying as people moved away to find work in bigger cities. The gas gauge in Jake's truck was getting low. He stopped at a gas station on the edge of town. The pump was old and worked slowly. While he waited, Jake counted his money again. He had $800 in cash in his wallet. That was it. If he spent money on gas and food, he would have even less for a horse. An old man at the gas station noticed Jake's worried look. "You heading to the horse auction?" the man asked. "Yes, sir," Jake replied, "looking for a good working horse." The old man shook his head. "Prices have been going up. A lot of people looking for horses these days. You might have a hard time finding what you need for a good price." Jake's heart sank a little, but he thanked the man and got back in his truck. He drove through the main street of Millfield. Most of the buildings were empty. The old movie theater had boards over its windows. The diner looked like it might close soon, too. The auction house was on the other side of town. It was a big metal building with a gravel parking lot. Even though it was still early, there were already many trucks and trailers parked there. Jake found a spot near the back and turned off his engine. He sat in his truck for a few minutes and watched other people walking toward the building. Most of them looked like they had money. They wore nice boots and clean hats. Their trucks were newer than his. Jake looked down at his own clothes. His jeans had holes in the knees. His boots were old and worn out. His hat had sweat stains around. The band. Jake felt out of place, but he got out of his truck anyway. He had come this far. He had to at least try. As he walked toward the auction house, he could hear horses making noise inside. There were sounds of people talking and moving. Around, the smell of hay and animals filled the air. At the entrance, a woman at a table asked for $5 to get in. Jake paid her and got a number on a piece of cardboard. "First time here?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Jake said. "Well, good luck. The auction starts in an hour." You can look at the horses until then. Jake walked into the big building. There were pens everywhere with horses of all sizes and colors. Some were young and strong-looking. Others were older and tired. People were walking around, looking at the horses and talking to each other about which ones they wanted to buy. Jake felt nervous. Everyone else seemed to know what they were doing. They checked the horses' teeth and legs like experts. Jake knew something about horses, but he was not an expert. He just needed a horse that could work hard and not get sick. He walked slowly through the rows of pens. The horses seemed expensive, even to his untrained eye. Many of them looked too fancy for ranch work. Others looked too old or too wild. Jake started to worry that he would not find anything he could afford. In one corner of the building, Jake found some horses that looked more like what he needed. They were not the prettiest horses, but they looked strong and healthy. He stopped at a pen with a brown mare that seemed calm and friendly. The sign on the pen said the bidding would start at $600. Jake did some quick math in his head. If the bidding started at $600, it would probably go higher. He might be able to afford this horse if he was lucky. But it would use almost all his money. As he stood there looking at the mare, Jake felt the weight of his situation. This was his last chance. If he could not buy a horse today, he would have to give up his ranch. Everything his father had taught him, everything he had worked for, would be gone. The mare looked at him with calm brown eyes. For a moment, Jake felt a little hope. Maybe this horse would be the answer to his problems. Maybe his luck was about to change. Jake walked around the auction house looking at different horses. The place was getting more crowded as the auction time got closer. Men in expensive cowboy hats talked loudly about which horses they wanted to buy. Jake felt small among all these people who seemed to have plenty of money. He stopped at another pen where a black stallion was kicking at the fence. The horse looked strong but wild. The starting bid for this one was $1,200. Jake shook his head and moved on. He could not afford horses like that. As he walked past a row of smaller pens, Jake noticed something strange. One of the horses, a gray mare that looked nervous and scared, suddenly became calm. Someone was talking to her in a soft voice. Jake looked closer and saw a young person kneeling by the pen. At first, Jake thought it was a boy. The person wore old jeans that were too big and had holes in both knees. The shirt was a man's flannel shirt, faded blue and torn at one elbow. An old baseball cap covered most of the person's hair. But when the person stood up and turned around, Jake saw it was a girl. She looked to be about 16 years old. Her face was thin and had smudges of dirt on it. Her hands were small but looked strong and rough from hard work. What surprised Jake most were her eyes. They were bright blue and very serious for someone so young. The girl saw Jake watching her and looked away quickly. She moved to the next pen where a brown horse was acting up, stamping its feet and making loud noises. Other people had walked past this horse because it seemed too wild to handle, but the girl went right up to the fence. "Easy there, boy," she said in a quiet voice. "Nobody's going to hurt you." The horse's ears moved toward the sound of her voice. She kept talking, saying calm words that Jake could not quite hear. Slowly, the horse stopped stamping and came closer to the fence. The girl reached through and gently touched the horse's nose. Jake was amazed. He had been around horses his whole life, but he had never seen anyone calm a wild horse so quickly. The girl seemed to know exactly what to do. She checked the horse's legs and teeth like an expert. Then she moved on to the next pen. Jake followed her, staying far enough back so she would not notice him. At each pen, the same thing happened. Horses that were acting scared or angry became calm when she talked to them. She seemed to understand what each horse needed to feel safe. Other people at the auction started to notice too. A man in a fancy suit walked over to where the girl was working with a young colt. "Hey, you," the man said in a loud voice. "Are you supposed to be here? This is a serious auction, not a place for kids to play." The girl looked up at him but did not answer. She kept working with the horse. "I'm talking to you," the man said, getting angry. "Where are your parents?" "She's okay, Mr. Johnson," said a voice from behind them. Jake turned and saw an older man in work clothes walking over. Sarah knows these horses better than anyone. Her grandfather used to own this place. The man in the suit looked confused. Well, she shouldn't be bothering the animals right before the auction. She's not bothering them, the older man said. She's helping them stay calm. Makes the auction go better for everyone. The man in the suit walked away, looking annoyed. The older man came over to the girl. "Don't mind him, Sarah," he said. "Some people don't understand horses like you do." The girl named Sarah smiled a little. "Thanks, Mr. Peterson. I was just making sure they're all okay. I know you were. You've got your grandfather's gift with animals." Mr. Peterson walked away, and Sarah went back to work. Jake wanted to talk to her, but he did not know what to say. He had never met anyone so young who knew so much about horses. The loudspeaker crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, the auction will begin in 15 minutes. Please take your seats." People started moving toward the rows of metal chairs that faced a small stage. Jake found a seat near the back. He could see Sarah sitting by herself in the front row. She was not there to buy anything. She just seemed to care about what happened to the horses. The auctioneer was a fast-talking man with a loud voice. He started with the most expensive horses first. Jake watched as horses sold for thousands of dollars. Rich ranchers and horse dealers bid against each other like they were playing a game. Jake's heart sank as he watched. If these were the prices, he would never be able to afford anything. The brown Marais he had looked at earlier went for $900. The gray Marais that Sarah had calmed down sold for $750. The auction went on. The horses got cheaper, but they also got older and weaker. Jake saw a few that might work for ranch work, but other people always bid higher than he could afford. His $800 was not enough. Finally, near the end of the auction, an old horse was brought out. It was a bay Marais, brown with black mane and tail. She looked tired and thin. The auctioneer said she was 15 years old. "This is Molly," the auctioneer said. "She's been a good working horse, but she's getting on in years. Do I hear $200? Jake's hand went up. This might be his only chance. "I have 200. Do I hear 250? Another hand went up. Jake's heart started beating faster. 250. Do I hear 300? Jake raised his hand again. He could afford 300, but not much more. 300. Do I hear 350? The other bidder raised his hand. Jake felt sick. He could bid 350, but what if it went higher? 350. Do I hear 400? Jake looked at the old Marais. She was not the horse he had hoped for, but she might be his only choice. He raised his hand. 400. Do I hear 450? The other man looked at Jake and shook his head. He was done bidding. 400 going once. 400 going twice. Sold to number 43. Jake looked at his number. 43? He had bought the horse? But as he watched the old Marais being led away, he wondered if he had made a big mistake. She looked so tired and weak. Would she be able to do the hard work he needed? As people started to leave, Jake sat in his chair feeling worried. He had spent half his money on an old horse that might not be strong enough to save his ranch. He watched Sarah as she said goodbye to some of the horses that had been sold. She looked sad to see them go. Jake got up and walked toward the pens where his new horse was waiting. He would have to arrange to get her home somehow. His truck was not big enough to carry a horse. As he walked, he heard Sarah talking to Mr. Peterson near the office. "What's going to happen to me now?" she was asking. "I don't know, honey," Mr. Peterson said sadly. "The new owners say you can't stay here anymore. I've been trying to find you a place, but it's not easy." Jake stopped walking. He realized that Sarah had nowhere to go. Her grandfather was dead, and the people who bought the auction house did not want her around. For the first time, Jake looked at the girl and saw that she was in trouble too. Maybe even worse trouble than he was. Jake pretended to look at some papers while he listened to Sarah and Mr. Peterson talk. He felt bad for listening to their private conversation, but he could not help himself. The girl was in real trouble. "The social worker is coming tomorrow," Mr. Peterson was saying. "She wants to take you to a group home in the city. It's not a bad place, Sarah, but I know you don't want to leave." Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. I can't go to the city, Mr. Peterson. I don't know anything about city life. All I know is horses and ranch work. What am I supposed to do there? You'll learn new things. Maybe go to a regular school? Make friends your own age? I don't want friends my own age, Sarah said. I want to stay here and work with horses. It's what Grandpa taught me to do. Jake heard the sadness in her voice. He looked over and saw that she was trying not to cry. Mr. Peterson put his hand on her shoulder. I know this is hard, honey, but there's nothing I can do. The new owners don't want the responsibility of having a young person living here. They're afraid something might happen and they'd get in trouble. Sarah nodded but did not say anything. Jake could see that she understood even if she did not like it. You've got one more night here, Mr. Peterson said. Pack up your things. The social worker will be here at 10 in the morning. Mr. Peterson walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone by the office. She stood there for a long time, looking at the empty pens where the horses had been. Jake wanted to say something to her, but he did not know what. What could he say that would help? Jake went to the office to arrange transportation for his horse. The clerk told him it would cost $50 to have Molly delivered to his ranch. Jake paid the money, even though it hurt to spend more of his savings. Now he had less than $400 left. As he was leaving the office, Jake saw Sarah sitting on a hay bale near the back of the building. She had a small canvas bag next to her. Jake guessed that the bag held everything she owned in the world. Jake walked over to her slowly. He did not want to scare her or make her think he was being nosy. Excuse me, he said. I heard you talking to Mr. Peterson. I'm sorry about your situation. Sarah looked up at him with those serious blue eyes. Thanks, she said quietly. I'm Jake Morrison. I just bought the old bay mare. Molly, Sarah said. Her name is Molly. She's a good horse. Just tired. The people who owned her before didn't take very good care of her. Jake sat down on another hay bale. What do you mean? They didn't give her enough good food. And they made her work too hard for an old horse? But she's got a good heart. If, you treat her right, she work hard for you. How do you know all this about her? Sarah shrugged. I've been taking care of her since she got here 2 weeks ago. I take care of all the horses that come through here. It's what I do. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Mr. Peterson mentioned that your grandfather used to own this place. He owned it for 30 years, Sarah said with pride in her voice. He taught me everything about horses. How to feed them, how to train them, how to tell when they're sick. Grandpa said I had a natural gift with animals. I can see that. I watched you calm down those horses earlier. That was pretty amazing. Sarah smiled for the first time since Jake had been talking to her. Horses just need to trust you. Most people try to force them to do things. But if you're patient and kind, they'll do anything for you. Jake nodded. He was starting to get an idea, but it was a crazy idea. He tried to push it out of his mind. So you're really good with all kinds of ranch work? He asked. I can do everything, Sarah said. I can fix fences, feed cattle, even help with birthing if a cow or horse is having trouble. Grandpa made sure I learned it all. And you really don't want to go to the city? Sarah's face got serious again. I'd rather die than go to the city. I don't belong there. I belong on a ranch working with animals. Jake took a deep breath. The crazy idea was getting stronger in his mind. What if there was another way? He said, What do you mean? Jake looked at this young girl who knew more about ranch work than most grown men. He thought about his failing ranch and his money problems. He thought about the old horse he had just bought, who might not be strong enough to do the work he needed. I've got a ranch about 2 hours from here, Jake said slowly. It's not much right now. I'm having money problems and I might lose it soon, but I need help. I need someone who knows about horses and cattle and ranch work. Sarah looked at him with hope in her eyes, but also doubt. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we could help each other. You need a place to live and work. I need help on my ranch. Maybe there's a way to make it work. But I'm just a kid. Why would you want to help me? Jake thought about this question. Why did he want to help her? Maybe it was because he saw something special in her. Maybe it was because they were both in trouble and had nowhere else to turn. Or maybe it was because he had a feeling that this girl could do things that would surprise everyone. Because I think you're not just a kid, Jake said. I think you're someone who could make a real difference on a ranch. And right now, I need all the help I can get. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Jake could see her thinking hard about what he had said. But what about the social worker? She asked. What about the law? They won't just let me come with you. I don't know about all that, Jake admitted, but maybe we can figure it out. Maybe there's a legal way to make it work. Sarah looked around the auction house one more time. What would I have to do on your ranch? Everything, Jake said honestly. Feed animals, fix fences, help with hay, whatever needs doing. It would be hard work, and I can't pay you much. But you'd have a place to live and food to eat. And you'd be working with animals every day? That sounds like heaven to me, Sarah said quietly. Jake felt his heart beating fast. This was the craziest thing he had ever thought of doing. Taking in a 16-year-old girl when he could barely take care of himself. But something told him it was the right thing to do. There's something else, Jake said. I spent most of my money on Molly. I don't have much left. If I take you with me, I won't be able to buy the other things I need. Feed, supplies, stuff like that. We'd both be taking a big risk. Sarah looked him straight in the eye. Mr. Morrison, I've been taking risks my whole life. And I'd rather take a risk with someone who needs help than go to a place where nobody wants me. Jake felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe this girl could help him save his ranch. Maybe together they could figure out a way to make things work. Okay, he said, let's try it. But first we need to talk to Mr. Peterson and see if there's a legal way to do this. Sarah jumped up from the hay bale, her eyes bright with excitement. Really? You really want me to come work on your ranch? I really do, Jake said. But only if you're sure it's what you want. It's what I want more than anything in the world, Sarah said. For the first time in months, Jake felt like maybe his luck was starting to change. Jake and Sarah found Mr. Peterson in the auction house office. He was sitting at an old desk, doing paperwork by the light of a single lamp. When he saw them coming, he looked up with tired eyes. Sarah, you should be getting some sleep, he said. Tomorrow is going to be a hard day for you. Mr. Peterson, Sarah said, this is Jake Morrison. He has an idea that might help. Mr. Peterson looked at Jake with curiosity. What kind of idea? Jake felt nervous. When he said his plan out loud, it sounded even crazier than it had in his head. I own a ranch about 2 hours from here. I need help, and Sarah needs a place to live. I was thinking maybe she could come work for me. Mr. Peterson leaned back in his chair and studied Jake's face. You want to take in a 16-year-old girl? Do you have any idea what you're talking about? I know it sounds strange, Jake said, but I've watched Sarah work with horses today. She knows more about ranch work than most adults I've met, and she doesn't want to go to the city. It's not about what she wants, Mr. Peterson said. It's about what's legal and safe. You can't just take a minor child without going through the proper channels. Sarah sat down in a chair across from Mr. Peterson. What if there was a legal way to do it? What would have to happen? Mr. Peterson rubbed his forehead. Well, you'd need to become his legal guardian. That means background checks, home visits, court hearings. It takes months, and there's no guarantee it would be approved. Jake's heart sank. Months? She's supposed to go to the group home tomorrow? That's right. And once she's in the system, it becomes even harder to get her out. Sarah looked at Jake with disappointment in her eyes. I guess it was a nice idea, she said quietly, but Mr. Peterson was not finished talking. However, he said slowly, there might be another way. Jake and Sarah both looked at him with hope. Sarah is almost 17, Mr. Peterson continued. In this state, she can legally work and live independently at 17. If we could delay the social worker for a few months. How would we do that? Sarah asked. Well, I've been thinking about this since your grandfather died. There's an old law that says a minor child can continue living in their family home if they're being supervised by a responsible adult neighbor. It was meant for situations where parents die and the kids need time to figure things out. Jake felt a spark of hope. Would I count as a responsible adult neighbor? If you were willing to sign papers saying you'd check on Sarah regularly and make sure she's safe, maybe. It would buy us some time to work out a permanent solution. Sarah looked confused. But I can't stay here. The new owners don't want me. Mr. Peterson smiled for the first time that day. Actually, they might change their minds if they didn't. Have to worry about being legally responsible for you. If Jake signs the supervision papers, they might let you stay until you turn 17. Jake thought about this plan. It was not perfect, but it was better than letting Sarah go to a group home in the city. What would this supervision involve? Jake asked. You'd need to visit at least once a week to make sure Sarah is safe and has food and everything she needs. You'd also need to make sure she goes to school. I can do school online, Sarah said quickly. Lots of kids do that now. I could do my schoolwork in the evenings after I take care of the horses. Mr. Peterson nodded. That could work. And Jake, you'd need to give us references, people who can say you're a good, honest person. Jake thought about his neighbors and friends. I can do that. There's one more thing, Mr. Peterson said. This would only work if the new owners agree to let Sarah stay, and they'd want something in return. Like what? Sarah asked. Like you continuing to take care of the horses that come through here. They've already seen how good you are with the animals. It saves them money if they don't have to hire someone else to do it. Sarah's eyes lit up. I'd love to keep taking care of the horses here, and I could still come help Jake on his ranch during busy times. Jake was starting to see how this could work. So Sarah would live here and take care of the auction horses. I'd supervise her and make sure she's okay. And when I need extra help on my ranch, she could come work for me. Exactly, Mr. Peterson said. It's not a perfect solution, but it might work until Sarah turns 17 and can make her own decisions. When is your birthday? Jake asked Sarah. October 15th. That's about 4 months from now. So we'd need to make this arrangement work for 4 months, Jake said. I think I can do that. Sarah looked like she was about to cry, but this time from happiness instead of sadness. Do you really think the new owners will agree to this? Let me call them, Mr. Peterson said. They're probably still awake. This affects their business too. Mr. Peterson picked up the phone and dialed a number. Jake and Sarah sat quietly while he explained the situation to someone on the other end. They could hear him talking about supervision, agreements, and Sarah's skills with horses. After about 10 minutes, Mr. Peterson hung up the phone. Good news, he said. They're willing to try it. They were worried about hiring someone to take care of the horses anyway. If Sarah can keep doing that job, they'll let her stay in the small apartment above the office. Jake felt relief wash over him. So what happens now? Now we need to call the social worker and explain the new plan. Then we need to get the supervision. Papers drawn up. It's going to be a long night, but I think we can have everything ready by morning. Sarah jumped up and hugged Mr. Peterson. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done without your help. Don't thank me yet, Mr. Peterson said. This is still going to be hard work. You'll be living on your own, taking care of yourself, and working every day. Are you sure you're ready for that kind of responsibility? I've been taking care of myself since Grandpa got sick, Sarah said, and I love working with horses. This feels like a dream come true. Jake stood up and shook Mr. Peterson's hand. Thank you for helping us figure this out. I promise I'll take good care of Sarah. I believe you will, Mr. Peterson said. But remember, you're making a big commitment here. Sarah will be depending on you. I understand, Jake said. And Sarah, I hope you understand that my ranch is in trouble. I might not be able to pay you much, and the work will be hard. I don't care about money, Sarah said. I just want to work with animals and stay out of the city. As they worked through the night to prepare the papers, Jake thought about how much his life had changed in one day. He had come to the auction to buy a horse and save his ranch. Instead, he had found a partner who might be able to help him in ways he had never imagined. Sarah worked just as hard as the adults. making phone calls and filling out forms. Jake could see that she was mature for her age and serious about making. This arrangement worked. When the sun came up, they had everything ready. The social worker arrived at 10 o'clock as planned, but instead of taking Sarah to a group home, she reviewed the supervision papers and approved the plan. Jake shook hands with Sarah as the social worker left. "Well, partner," he said, "I guess we're in business together." Sarah smiled the biggest smile Jake had seen from her. "When do we start?" The first few weeks were harder than either Jake or Sarah had expected. Jake visited the auction house twice a week to check on Sarah and see how she was doing. Each time he came, he was amazed by how well she was handling her new life. Sarah had turned the small apartment above the office into a real home. She kept it clean and organized. She cooked simple meals for herself and always had food in the refrigerator. Most importantly, she took excellent care of all the horses that came through the auction house. The new owners were very happy with Sarah's work. She had a way of keeping the horses calm and healthy, which made them sell for better prices. Word spread among horse dealers that the Millfield auction house had the best cared for animals in the area, but Jake's ranch was still in trouble. Molly, the old horse he had bought, was doing better with good food and care, but she was not strong enough to do all the work Jake needed. He was falling behind on his chores and still had no money to buy supplies. One day in late July, Sarah called Jake on the phone. "I've been thinking," she said. "You need help on your ranch, and I have some free time between auctions. What if I came to work with you for a few days?" Jake hesitated. "Sarah, I told you I can't pay you much. And the work is really hard. I don't care about the money," Sarah said. "I want to help. Besides, I'm getting tired of just taking care of auction horses. I want to do real ranch work." Jake thought about it. He did need help, and Sarah had already proven she could work hard. "Okay," he said, "but only if you're sure you can handle it." Sarah arrived at Jake's ranch on a Saturday morning. She brought a small bag of clothes and a huge amount of enthusiasm. When she saw the state of the ranch, she did not complain or look discouraged. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The first thing Sarah noticed was that Jake was not feeding his cattle properly. The grass in his pastures was mostly dead from the drought, but he was not giving the cows enough supplemental feed to make up for it. "Jake," she said, "your cows are too thin. They need more nutrition if you want them to stay healthy." "I know," Jake said sadly, "but good feed costs money I don't have." Sarah walked around the pasture, looking at the land carefully. "What about that field over there?" she asked, pointing to a section of land that Jake was not using. "What about it?" "The grass there looks a little better, and I see some plants growing that cows like to eat. If we moved the cattle there and fenced it properly, they might get more nutrition from natural sources." Jake looked where Sarah was pointing. She was right. He had not been using that field because it was further from the barn, but the grass was indeed better there. "But I don't have money for new fencing," Jake said. "What about using the old fence posts that are lying around? I saw a pile of them behind the barn. We could reuse them and just buy new wire." Jake felt a spark of hope. Sarah's idea might actually work, and it would cost much less than he had thought. They spent the next 3 days moving cattle and building fence. Sarah worked as hard as any grown man Jake had ever hired. She seemed to know instinctively how to handle the cows, and where to place the fence posts for maximum efficiency. When they were finished, the cattle had access to better grass and seemed happier and healthier almost immediately. Jake could not believe the difference it made. "How did you know to do that?" he asked Sarah. "Grandpa taught me that cattle will always find the best grass if you let them," she said. "You just have to think like a cow and figure out where they want to be." The next week, Sarah came back to help with hay cutting. Jake's hayfield had not produced much because of the drought, but Sarah had ideas about that too. "Instead of cutting all the hay short, what if we cut it longer?" she suggested. "Long hay has more nutrition, even if there's less of it." Jake had never heard of this technique, but he was willing to try anything. Sarah was right again. The longer hay was better quality, and the cattle preferred it to the short, dry hay Jake usually made word began to spread among Jake's neighbors about the improvements on his ranch. Other ranchers started asking him for advice about cattle feeding and hay cutting. Jake always gave credit to Sarah, but some people found it hard to believe that a 16-year-old girl had come up with such good ideas. As the summer went on, Sarah spent more and more time at Jake's ranch. She was still taking care of the auction horses, but she arranged her schedule so she could help Jake during his busiest times. Together, they fixed water systems, repaired buildings, and improved pastures. Sarah seemed to have an endless supply of creative ideas for doing things better and cheaper. More importantly, she brought an energy and optimism to the ranch that had been missing for years. In August, something unexpected happened. A cattle buyer came to look at Jake's cows and was impressed by their condition. Even though there had been a drought, Jake's cattle looked healthy and strong. "I'll give you top price for these animals," the buyer said. "They're some of the best-looking cattle I've seen this year." Jake sold half his herd for more money than he had made in the past 2 years combined. For the first time since the drought began, he had enough money to pay his bills and buy supplies for the winter. "This is all because of you," Jake told Sarah that evening as they sat on the porch of his ranch house. "Your idea saved my ranch. We saved it together," Sarah said. "You were willing to listen to new ideas and work hard to make them happen. Not every rancher would have done that." As September arrived, Sarah's 17th birthday was getting closer. They both knew that when she turned 17, she would be able to make her own decisions about where to live and work. One day, Jake worked up the courage to ask the question that had been on his mind for weeks. "Sarah," he said, "what do you want to do after your birthday?" "You'll be free to go anywhere, do anything." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about that," she said. "The auction house job is okay, but it's not really what I want to do with my life." Jake's heart sank. He had been hoping she would want to continue working with him. "What I really want," Sarah continued, "is to be a real partner on a real ranch. I want to help build something important, not just take care of horses that are passing through." Jake looked at her hopefully. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I'd like to stay here and work with you, if you'll have me. Not as a hired hand, but as a real partner. Someone who has a say in how things are done and a share in the success." Jake felt happiness flood through him. "Sarah, I would love that more than anything. But are you sure? You're young and smart. You could go to college, see the world, do anything you want." "This is what I want," Sarah said firmly. "I want to build the best cattle ranch in the state, and I think we can do it together." On October 15th, Sarah's 17th birthday, Jake took her to see a lawyer. They drew up papers making Sarah a junior partner in the Double M Ranch. It was not a big ranch yet, but it was profitable and growing. Over the next year, they expanded the operation and bought more land. Sarah's innovative ideas and Jake's experience made them a formidable team. Other ranchers started coming to them for advice and buying cattle from them. 5 years later, the Double M Ranch was known throughout the state for having the healthiest cattle and most efficient operations. Sarah had become one of the youngest, successful ranchers in the region. Jake often thought back to that day at the auction house when a desperate rancher met a girl in rags who asked him to take her instead of a horse. It was the best decision he had ever made. Sarah had not just saved his ranch. She had shown him that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships can create the most extraordinary results. Together, they had built something neither of them could have achieved alone. And every time Jake saw Sarah working with the cattle or coming up with a new idea to improve their operation, he remembered her words from that first day, "Take me, not them." It had sounded like a crazy request from a desperate girl. Instead, it had been the smartest business proposition anyone had ever offered him.